Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone say hi to Bo. This is my sidekick today. Bo, we're going to talk about flood insurance. So everybody can see Bo sitting there on the ground. And so the way flood insurance is derived is really by two ways. The first thing that FEMA uses to determine if a property is in a flood zone is looking at the topography of the land. So you're looking at as if you would look out across a vacant lot or across the land, right? So technically every piece of land in the country is in a flood zone. Only certain flood zones actually require flood insurance. The majority of the flood zones that we see up here that require flood insurance are AE, that type of thing. So in 1991, when I got into the business, we always had to have a survey on every single piece of property, no matter if it had closed 6 months prior, a month prior. Well, maybe a month we could have used it, but more than 90 days we had to have a brand new survey. So of course that was pretty expensive, $350 to $450 for every, that would be added to every single transaction. Within that survey would also include the flood insurance. Well, and if you will remember the huge flood that we had where the Red River flooded, and I want to say it was in 91, 92. Anyway, it's irrelevant. I don't remember exactly when it was, but the short version is then that's when we realized that the flood data that we were receiving on the surveys, the actual surveyors were not licensed and bonded to provide that information. The reason that was so critical back during that time was because surveyors were not liable for giving out wrong information if in fact they actually got the flood zone incorrect. So spring forward, every single loan that we do now, and it's been this way for numerous years, we have to do a flood certification on every single property that closes, whether it's a bank, a mortgage lender, a broker. It doesn't matter. If there's a loan done on the property, a flood certification, and it's good for the entire life of the loan. So if any time through that loan period the flood zone changes, then you would be required to get flood insurance, or you could drop it. So anyway, so you had the topography of the land, that's the zone, and then the elevation of where your property sits above the base flood elevation, so above sea level. So FEMA comes in and they establish what the base flood is for your area, and if the lowest adjacent grade next to your property was at a certain or was below that base flood, then your premium would be a lot higher. The reason I'm making that differentiation is because about a year and a half ago they changed it. So it actually helped all of us up here in our area, because now flood insurance is, assuming you have no contents coverage, is $500 to $600 a year, maybe $700 a year. Of course, it can go up if you decide to add contents coverage to it. But the reason that that is so significant is because elevation no longer matters. So it's just about flood zone. But the people who it did affect significantly for the negative side are our neighbors in South Louisiana, because now they're in different flood zones, and so now their flood insurance premium sometimes doubled or tripled. So now whenever we have people who are looking at properties in a flood zone, for you realtors, of course builders already kind of know this because you have to build it up above the base flood anyway, out of the actual flood plain. But for existing construction, realtors, I still get it every now and again where, oh my gosh, it's in a flood zone, it's going to be super expensive. No, it's anywhere between, like I said, $400 to $600, maybe $700, and which is more palatable. Of course, just because you're in a flood zone doesn't mean you're going to flood. Just because you're not in a flood zone doesn't mean you won't flood. So flood insurance in our area is a lot more reasonable now, and it in and of itself. Now, of course, homeowners insurance premiums are all coming up in our state, but flood insurance in and of itself is a a federal government regulated premiums, and so this has really helped us up here in our area. And of course, as most of you know, flood zones, they kind of meander through the subdivision, so you could have a house that's not in a flood zone and the house right next door to it is in a flood zone. And so we get that a lot as well. So just because the neighbor is or isn't doesn't mean that you are or are not. So let me know if you have any questions about flood insurance at all. And thank you for listening. Have a great evening.